Welcome to From the Bleachers. This is, I guess we can call it an FTB exclusive. So hopefully everybody has already listened to this week's episode. It was a lot of fun. Me, Connor, and Sophia talked about the Major League Baseball playoffs and the Stanley Cup and had some fun See a Buddy stories. So that's already out. But this is a From the Bleachers exclusive. Myself, Dan Bahl, joined by Sophia Alfieri in a little bit of a different role than we normally see you, Sophia. You're normally our social media manager. You've jumped in as our co-host since quarantine has started. But today you are the interviewee, and we have a very important conversation during the course of this interview to be had. You've launched a new professional project, Courtney Marchese, Quinnipiac University professor. You've partnered with her. So this project, entitled Fifth Wave, Progress and Persistence After 100 Years of Suffrage and 4 Waves of Feminism, is a report detailing the evolution of women's rights and gender equality since the ratification of the 19th Amendment in August of 1920, almost said 2019. Its data reflect, that's the kind of year it's been. Its data reflects significant trends and eye-openers for some of the most relevant topics regarding women, such as reproductive rights, family leave policies, and leadership opportunities. This is an absolutely awesome thing that you guys have put together here, a very important study. So the first thing, Sophia, that I really want to know, what was the inspiration behind this? How did you and Courtney come together and decide this is something that you wanted to take on?
So I was originally Professor Marchese's grad assistant. I started out as her grad assistant in the summer of 2019, continued into the fall, and then I was kind of done around January, but she came to me with this idea. She had gone to a conference, and she was reminded at that conference that it was going to be 100 years since women received the right to vote in August. And it kind of got her thinking, because we had originally been working on a millennial voting survey project on the side before this.
Okay.
So she came to me about it, and she was like, I had this really great idea. I think I want to scrap what we're doing for now and work on this. Like, August's coming up, 100 years. We have the election coming up. I think this would be a really cool idea. I was like, I am totally on board. I think this is a really great idea. I'm all for women's rights, and I think more people need to know about the inequalities that still exist. So we started probably like February, March, and literally like just finished up. So
it's a labor of love. You can tell. I mean, this thing is 100 pages long, and I was going through it a couple nights ago. You guys, the legwork that you put in is extremely clear. But I want to know, what were your goals behind doing this? What were some of the things that maybe you wanted to accomplish with this?
So we really wanted it to be a really trustworthy source of information about women's rights, and like a collective summary of everything that we have overcome and gone through over the past 100 years in some of the most important topics, like voter turnout, education, income, reproductive rights, some of the things that are still hot topics today. So I think just one of our biggest goals was to create a report that people could look to, especially in a time when the election's coming up and people are still deciding where to vote, what to support. So that was a goal. And then in the terms of graphics, we really wanted to be a fun report that popped. We wanted it to stand out. We didn't want it to be dull. We were like, we have to use some bright colors, some nice colors, some really cute little icons and stuff to make it, fun, but also a serious project.
Well, you having the background in marketing and, getting engagement through digital, I mean, that's a great background to have when you're trying to think, how can we make this information as engaging as possible? So it's a great skill set to be able to have to kind of make something jump out.
Yeah. And it's, I don't really know much about Photoshop and that, those tools, and that's Professor Marchese's specification, but
Right.
I have a creative mind, so I was kind of able to express what I was seeing or what I saw best for a certain page or a certain topic. And now finishing it, I'm using my public relations and social media skills to kind of run a little bit of a campaign on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and I'm going to do some pitching as well to see if it gets some traction. Because really, with the election coming up, we want to raise awareness of it.
As somebody who has ran social media accounts and who has a mind for the digital field, what's the rollout plan? What are some of the goals and what are some of the areas that you were really trying to hit when putting this out?
So I came up with like a plan, a social media plan. We'd like to put it out across Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We have a lot of connections, personal connections and networking on Twitter through friends and colleagues. Also, we find them to be really good platforms for reports, a professional report, and women's rights and activism, especially with the fact that it is a graphic heavy report. Instagram is perfect. Rolling it out on platforms, main goal is to increase awareness of the report, rolling it out on those 3 platforms, but also I've come up with a press release about the report, and I'm going to be pitching it to a bunch of different organizations who are involved in women's rights and gender equality, and also possibly going to be pitching it to local media as well, because Quinnipiac School, we have the Polling Institute, so
Right.
it's kind of just something that Quinnipiac is involved in either way. So yeah, we've taken some of our most important topics and we have converted the data and the information into social media posts. And we wanted to go with some of the hard-hitting topics right now, like reproductive rights is a really important topic right now between our 2 candidates. So we made sure we had that turned into social graphics. We wanted to make sure we covered where the United States sits in terms of gender equality compared to other countries, because it's kind of sad, honestly, where the United States sits. So we wanted to make sure that when we were putting things out on social, we're focusing on the important topics that maybe people are kind of divided on right now when it comes to, oh, who am I going to vote for? Where am I going to side with?
So with some of those hot button topics that you were talking about, obviously without giving it away, because we want people to go and check it out for themselves, what are some of the big findings, a summary of the bigger findings that you guys were able to come across with all of this research?
Well, in summary, if I had to put it in one line, it's that the United States is quite far behind when it comes to gender equality. There are many inequalities that still exist. Women have come really far in the past 100 years, but it could take 100 and maybe even more than 100 more to reach full gender equality, which it's kind of sad. Some of the things I discovered were even surprising to me as a woman. It was things that I didn't know, whether it was in the past, like I had no idea that women couldn't have their own credit card for a while. They had to have a man sign off on it before they opened an account or had a credit card. That's something I didn't know. I learned the importance of Title X, which is what funds like Planned Parenthood and healthcare and reproductive rights and stuff like that. So it just, to put it plainly, it's the United States has a long way to go when it comes to gender equality in all different kinds of topics.
And obviously without getting too political, I'm sure this current election cycle could have a big impact one way or another.
Oh, absolutely. With reproductive rights and family leave, and probably even income as well. So it's, again, it was another reason that it fueled the fire behind the report, because it's important to celebrate everything that women have gone through and succeeded with. But I want men and women alike to realize that we're not done. And if we don't start doing more, we won't be done for maybe another 100 years.
Hopefully there will not have to be another report in 100 years.
Yeah, I won't be here. Someone else will have to do it.
and if there is a report, hopefully it will be more of a summary of here's how we got to 50-50. But
Yeah,
removing myself from that soapbox, I want to ask you about the concept of change, because you guys have examined 100 years worth of American life with this 100-page document. So how have you seen change manifest itself? Has there been growth? Has there been change? How have you seen change within the country kind of show itself in the data? It's kind of a roundabout question, but
yeah, no, there's no doubt when looking at the report and when I started doing my research that there has been significant change. If you think back to the early 1900s, women couldn't vote. They rarely went to school. They didn't have professional jobs. Like, it wasn't an idea even in their heads to go and get their own jobs. The idea of getting reproductive health care systems was nowhere to be found. And within a matter of years, that was all changing. You get into like there's 5 waves of feminism, which is kind of what the report is named after. We're in the 5th wave of it right now.
right.
But the first wave had to do with suffrage. We got the 19th Amendment. Second wave kind of happened around World War I. Soldiers went to war. Women started to make money. They used to go and work. They all came back from the war and they wanted to continue working. And that kind of led to wanting them to get an education so that they could get whatever job they wanted. So it kind of happened with just the change in events that were going on in the United States. So as different events happened and each decade passed, more and more opportunities were coming up for women. But of course, when there's always those opportunities, there's still those barricades. Like, it's like when one thing pops up, another does. But we've overcome a lot in the past 100 years, and we're continuing to overcome. And I think if we all do a little bit more every day, we could lessen the amount of time it could take to reach full gender equality.
How important is it to have women reaching positions of power, whether it be business, political, things of that nature?
It's very important because it sets a really good example for other women, and I think for men as well, because I feel there's just such a stereotype that women can't lead. Women are too emotional, when in fact some of the data we came across said that people think women in top executive positions would do better than a man because they think they're a little bit more fair and they're a little bit more empathetic. So it would set a really good example, because things have just been favoring men and white men for just historically a very long time. So the more women that are put in powerful positions, I think the more shift we can see for women to get those kinds of opportunities, which still nowadays, the fact that those opportunities don't exist, it kind of stems from the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at least in years past, when you've looked at the very top of anything looked pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a white guy in his 60s, and a couple people looking like him around him. So I think, obviously, I'm coming at this from a different perspective, but being able to have role models for the next generation to be able to strive towards, that's got to be pretty important. And I kind of building off of it, but I want to talk specifically about the future, because you guys are examining the past 100 years, and hopefully this data can influence the next 100 years. So completely from a statistical, analytical research standpoint, what does your data say about the future for women and women's equality?
So the data really shows that if we don't participate more in bringing gender equality about more in our everyday lives, it could take, I believe it's a little bit over 100 more years to reach full gender equality. That's what statistics say. And it could take just as long for women to be paid the same amount as men. So the data just shows that if we're not continuing to support women's rights and support the people who support women's rights and, you know, have a voice and an influence in government, that it could just take a very long time for everything to be equal. And it's not, I'm glad you know, earlier you brought up how it's always like a white man in his 60s, because it's another really important thing that I kind of learned when I was doing the report. It's that it's not, you can't just think of it as black and white.
Right.
There's Hispanic women and there's Asian women. There's so many different races and cultures that are experiencing the same amount of inequality in all over the world. And so our message with calling it the fifth wave, it's in the report, but spoiler alert, but we mentioned in the report that we want people to go forth into the fifth wave of feminism, not only considering the fact that if we don't keep pushing forward, we're not going to get to the end goal, but to also consider all of the other groups that have inequalities in their everyday life, because we can't forget about them. You know, we can't just be like, oh, it's just the United States. We have to consider everything outside of the United States as well, because it's everywhere. And if we don't all work together, it's going to take a long time to get where we want to be.
Yeah, the most important thing, working together, having the same message, everybody pulling on the same rope. Now, from a personal standpoint, changing that question a little bit, what do you believe needs to change, needs to happen, even in your own personal life that you've observed? What kind of change would you like to see in the world, and do you think needs to happen in the world?
I mean, I just wish men would stop looking down on women. That is the one thing that irks me so much, it kind of shocks me how often it still occurs. Men just look down on women, and they're very stereotypical, and they think that they can treat us however they want, which is, that's not the case. You know, we are people too. Just because we're a different gender doesn't mean we're less of a person than you. So I want to see people treating women more equally, fairly, with more respect. You know, people like to dig at women for their gender. It's like that. It has to stop. Like, this is childish at this point. We have to move on, because we deserve to be in the same positions that men are in. Like, just because we're a different gender, that doesn't mean we can't do just as good of a job. And
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
that concept as a 22-year-old, even as a man, that makes no sense.
Yeah, and data shows that people believe women can do well in top positions. So it's like, why is there this disconnect where this data is showing one thing, but we're not seeing it in real life? So it's like people have to just follow their word. You know, don't say one thing and don't give data on one thing and show something the other way. Like, it's a lot easier than you think to be more inclusive and equal in everyday life. So I just think people need to treat women with more respect and start opening their minds to the fact that we can be in top positions. We can maybe make more money than you if we're in a higher position, you know?
I'm hoping in the bottom of my heart, you know, I have a younger sister, so I'm no stranger to it.
Mm-hmm.
I am hoping at the bottom of my heart that as time passes and the generation that we both belong to kind of comes into power, that change will manifest itself.
Luckily, data shows that younger generations feel that this is something that they can change more so than the older generations. They have more faith that that gender equality can be achieved in their lifetime. It's, you know, it's something that they really care about more so than the older generations. So things are looking up.
That's a good way.
Yeah.
That's a good way to kind of, That's a good realization to be able to have once you get to the end of months and months of research. But is there anything else that you want people to know about this project? Anything behind the process? What were some of the places that you were able to find some of this great data?
Well, a really good source was the Global Gender Gap Index from the World Economic Forum. They came out with, I think maybe it's every 4 years, but they had just in December 2019 released a huge report about gender equality and how it compares in 153 different countries. And they looked across, I believe it was leadership, health, politics, economics, stuff like that. It was a couple different categories, and it went through every single country and where they rank and how they rank. It's a giant report. So we got a lot of data from that. A lot of really great scholarly sources, and, of course, the trusted Pew Research. They had a lot of great information. A lot of the women's rights organizations as well. They've put their own data out, which we kind of took from, and we were also kind of inspired. Their reports are also kind of colorful too, so we were inspired by just not only the data itself, but the look of the report. So yeah, it was a very long process, but we had really good sources and very up-to-date sources.
Most importantly, where can people find it?
Well, people can find it on issue.com. It is currently in my Instagram bio, my Twitter bio. It's in my LinkedIn. We'll be posting it. Maybe we can post it on from the Bleachers. Maybe we can link it to this post.
Absolutely.
But yes, so it's online right now. Eventually, we're going to be printing it. I don't know how many copies we'll print, but we'll see what the reaction is like. So yeah.
Can an autographed copy be in the works to Suffolk?
Yeah, you want one?
Yeah.
I would totally send you one of those for sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
To Dan, I don't even know how to say that. I was going to try to say that I'm your biggest fan, but that doesn't really work with an autograph coming from you. But we'll work on the personalized message.
Fans.
Oh boy. Well, yes, make sure first of all, everybody goes and follows Sophia, that you're able to find a link on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, connect with her on LinkedIn. That's where the party always is. Anything else that you want people to know about this? I
just want people to really read through it and absorb the information, especially as they consider voting on November 3rd. So, and go vote. Definitely read it, absorb it, and then go to the back page and learn how you can go and vote, because we have the instructions and we want to make sure everyone is aware of the inequalities that still exist for women, but also to appreciate how far we have
come far, but still much further to go. Sophia Alfieri, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about this. This is extremely important. Please, everybody, go read it and then go back and read it again, and then read the back page about 100 times. Go out and vote in November. But that's it for this FTB exclusive. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Go online to bleachersradio.com. That's our blog. You can follow us on Twitter at Bleachers Radio. A link to this very same report will be in the bio of From the Bleachers, because that's a thing that we can do. So make sure you go follow us on Twitter at Bleachers Radio. You can subscribe to us for the audio podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. That's how you get these episodes first, and we will see you next week right back here on FTB. Good night.